No. Welcome back to another great episode of Security Hall Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Joseph Long. Not only is he a doctor and works at JSOU, but he's actually one of us, a former SOF commander. And I feel like he's a lot more like us.
How's it going, Danny? It's great to be
here. Than you can even
it.
imagine.
It's a great opportunity.
Joseph, thank you for joining us today. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, no. I think he was breaking up there for a second. That's tragic. I missed whatever clever thing you said about me.
That's right. We'll edit that.
It was either that or just the people that are watching in the future that are rolling their eyes. Like, where'd you find this guy?
How you doing today?
Yeah, so it's great to be here, man. I appreciate an opportunity to come in here and have some interesting discussions. I know when we met the first time, it was a lot of fun. So there's an opportunity for us to hopefully all learn something.
Absolutely.
From ourselves and try to benefit the rest of the folks out there listening.
Yeah, you're no slouch when it comes to the academic world. Just going through Google alone, you'll find some insanely insightful research documents and papers you've come across and done throughout your time in academia. And it's like, holy cow, like what to talk about? Because not only are you somebody that we can talk about ethics, because it's a very important thing when you look at the way we deal with ethics in our community specifically, but then how does that translate when we move out into the civilian world? Very different.
It is. And one of the things that I leaned in on the ethics is specifically that. And it's kind of like the idea of how to avoid certain things. We're going to do certain things, but how to avoid other things that will have an emergent, long-lasting impact negatively on the rest of your lives later. And I think that's something that a lot of us are dealing with. And what made me get into it, and if anybody out there is listening that does know me or even knew me as an ODA commander, we're probably laughing. In fact, from what I understand, probably a year or so ago, when they were briefing the commanding general on one of the papers going into Special Warfare magazine, so somebody was like, "That's Joe Long. He wrote that." And and it's like that's what makes it interesting, though, is that we're doing these experiences, we're making good decisions, we're making bad decisions, we're trying to learn from them, and I feel like that's the best way that I can give back is just to kind of come in and be honest and say, hey, this is what we did, this is what I thought was okay at the time, and how does that affect us later? Realizing that since the 2005 timeframe, a lot of things have happened. And what really got me interested is coming to JSOW, and it was right about the time that the comprehensive review was getting ready to come out. And so my co-author, Carrie, and I, we wanted to get ahead of it. We wanted to kind of say, let's do an objective look at ethics before we get told what we're supposed to think about, because we wanted to make sure that we were not just responding to what some people said, but kind of getting into it. And we did. And what we found is that the solutions that we started presenting, the ideas that we dove into, were outside the results of the comprehensive review. So when that thing finally came out, like I don't want to say disappointed, but that's really the best word for it. Like I was kind of disappointed because it said a lot of things, and it tried to find different levers to pull on, that it's that we're overworked and that it's a problem with junior leaders coming in, particularly junior officers, which in a way I thought was kind of comical.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, oh, these junior leaders coming in are leading us astray. But, there's not a lot of SF guys I know that would provide that much agency to our incoming captains to be like, you guys are ruining it for us.
Absolutely not.
So I thought that was kind of funny. But it never talked about education. And so what I get to do at JSOW is provide education. And some of that is educating on the knowledge that exists. But the researcher part, and the part that I like, is trying to uncover new knowledge and get that out there. And I do that by maintaining a close relationship with the NCO Academy, so that no matter what kind of, harebrained schemes I might come up with or big ideas, if I'm tied to the true SOF professionals in the building from the Joint Force, then I know that I can't get too far away from where we are as a special operations professional community. And I take a lot of comfort in that, just like I did having as a new captain, having a team sergeant and a team there to keep me from doing stupid things. I feel like as a researcher and educator, I still have that. So I'm grateful there. But I wanted to focus on education, the gap. There's no easy solutions, right? There's no class you can take. There's always the idea that if we could add something to the Q course, that'll fix the problem. If we can tweak it, it's almost like fixing a car. I'm just going to I'm going to redo the cams, and suddenly we're going to get the horsepower we want. Education's longer term, but I think that's the real gap. Is it's education in a meaningful way, and then a lot of times with that education comes framing it in a way that matters, because in some of my classes I use the term choir boys. It was in a newspaper article. Some SF folks, I think they were getting interviewed here in the Tampa area, and they were like, this is bullshit. They're expecting us to be choir boys, and I'm like, that's a problem, right? You can't ask us to do certain things and then ask us not to be what comes of it. But what we can do is minimize the damage we do to ourselves when we go too far. So
yeah,
I very, very deliberately, and I know I'm talking a lot coming out of the gate, but
you're good. You're good.
Getting a lot of it, but I very deliberately want to kind of take away from the idea that we're trying to fix you, or we're trying to make everybody into choir boys. No. Like, I think the ethics research that I'm doing very, very specifically recognizes who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
With that idea that in doing so, we also have an obligation to help each other, to do the things we need to do. And sometimes they're outside of the binary aspect of right and wrong. I get that. I even had a hard time saying that, because the unit JAG officers kept coming back and they're like, well, you can't say that. And I'm like, well, there's classes when you learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So if there's classes where you learn how to do that, how can I not say that we do it? But we do. So then the question is, how do we learn how to do those things to maximize our operational effectiveness, but not cause us harm, moral injury that has a tendency to sneak up on us years later? And I think that that's one of the great things that we can explore, and it becomes interesting. And sometimes folks come in and they hear it and they don't want to hear it, or, they hear it for the first time and it's like, I know what I'm doing. I made it.
Ethics is not a sexy thing to sell to anybody in our community, especially when it's a culture of, I don't care. I don't care how you do it. Get it done. And it's like, if you're going to tell me that, I'm going to do it.
We're going to do it. And what we have, though, especially when you talk to the senior leaders, right? And that's the other thing about being in JSOW. I get to talk to varying levels of SOF leaders across the Joint Force and, different levels. And so the ones that make it to the more senior levels, I find that they're kind of biased by their experience having been positive, where they've made it. Whatever their coping mechanisms were for balancing what you have to do with that. Sometimes it's just a matter of not getting caught. And then you think, well, hey, that's not my problem anymore. And I didn't like that as a solution either. So sometimes it's harder even to have these conversations with the senior leaders, because they think that they've overcome it. And then it takes a good 20, 30-minute conversation for them to finally go, okay, there's room for me to learn and grow and develop and try to have a better understanding of it. Because this isn't about me or you or anybody with rank on their shoulders having a more successful career. It's about all of us as a community learning from each other. And that's the approach that I've chosen to take. And so far it's starting to have some positive benefits. And, that's the main reason why I wanted to come here and have this conversation in the first place. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's a very important thing to discuss because of the effects it can have later on down the road. And you called it out, moral injury. It might not bother you, the things you're willing to do right now to get the mission done, but how far are you willing to go And at first you might think, hey, this is fine. This will never affect me. But now we're looking at guys that are 20, 25 years in the military and they're leaving. And all that trauma, all that stuff has a way of rearing its ugly head. So for the next guys, for the next generation of Green Berets, we have to do a better, we have to come across in a better way when we discuss ethics. And it is not this thing that we have to fear or talk about. Like, look, like there is a certain amount of understanding that you are going to be tasked to do the most impossible things, but you don't have to sell your soul to the devil to make everything happen. Hey,
No.
if it can't be done, it can't be done.
Even if you have to do something that you're not happy with, if you do it for the right reasons, and then you limit it to just the times that you have to do it for the right reasons.
Yes.
you can be okay because it makes sense, but it's when it becomes habitual, or in the paper, we talk about this culture of getting away with it. That's where it kind of becomes a problem, where you don't even see it as wrong anymore. Yeah. And there's that, and it's kind of like the relative deprivation, right? You don't realize how bad it is till you get away, and then you get around other people, and then you're like, oh, I didn't realize
this isn't normal.
Was really quite so odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you find yourself having a hard time dealing with the rest of the world. So yeah, if we can prevent these mortal injuries that typically emerge later, and we like to think you can hide from it for a certain amount of time. It just depends on when it's going to come back up. Sometimes it comes up while you're still in, and maybe that's even better because there's people there that still care about you and help you. But oftentimes it comes up later, much later. And, and we all know, I think all of our listeners are listening because they realize that we have issues with our brothers taking kind of the ultimate steps to solve their pain problems. And we all, we can get on Facebook and be like, call your buddies when they hear about something, but that doesn't do anything, right? I'm trying to lean in and get ahead of those things and say, what can we really do? Part of it is the preventative side, right? If you can prevent a certain amount of weight from going into your rucksack, then when you transition, there's fewer things to take out of it. Some of it you have to put in there, but nobody likes to carry extra shit.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're saying is and maybe the transition and the counseling and the stuff the VA offers can take certain amounts of it out. But if you stack too much in there, then, if you put 10 stones in there and you're taking 5 stones out, then you still have 5 stones in there.
Yeah.
And if those 5 things weren't really necessary for your packing list, then you might have been able to solve that problem. And, and I also think we have to remind ourselves that we have an obligation to do this. We beat ourselves to death over tactical things. If we're clearing rooms and I stand in the wrong place, everyone's going to let me know, hey, dumbass, you did this. I mean, we beat each other up over that, but we don't ever pull each other aside and say, hey, I did that once and I don't really like the way it made me feel.
Yeah, we're not comfortable talking about other things and being emotionally vulnerable in a team room. It's a very, and now from the outside looking in now, knowing what I know after going through my recovery, it's like, man, why don't we do that? Why don't we sit down before we have those classes on who's going to be the pay and foo agent and sit down and be like, hey, look, as a young NCO, I was put in this position by my senior and it was horrible. I hated what I had to do, but the team succeeded. Don't do this. We can succeed regardless. We don't have to do this. But those kind of conversations don't happen.
They're
not.
We also can't expect that some other senior leader is going to make those decisions for us or buy the risk, or that we're going to solve these problems by some super creative commander or CSM being like, I'm going to make this against the rules.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. But that doesn't, you're not there. Nobody's there. We have to solve the problems ourselves and make it to where we choose not to do it because we know that it has harm. And I think I said this before when we were first meeting. We used to run with rucksacks on a lot. And now when you see a young guy running with a rucksack, you're going to be inclined to be like, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
Why? Because I can barely walk upstairs now. You're in a better position now early to avoid that negative outcome. So once you know that, and to watch people run with a rucksack and don't say anything kind of makes you an asshole.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not even doing your duty as a brother, as a special operations brother, as a fellow Green Beret. You have an obligation. When we're shooting and somebody's doing something wrong, you have an obligation to be like, hey, that's not how you do it. Or we don't do that anymore. There's new techniques that came out. There's new things we learned, right? We're always moving, we're always improving. We have an obligation to do that. So this is the same thing where it's like, hey, listen, man, I was 23 once. I knew what I was doing. I know what you're doing, and I'm going to try to ask you not to do that. I think that's that part of the brotherhood that we should embrace.
Absolutely.
Make it what we do. Make it a part of what we do.
We always talk about lessons learned and making sure we have AAR, making sure that we are deeply analytical about all our mistakes so we don't repeat them. But like you said, it's all based on the tactical realm. It's all based on, shoot, move, communicate. How can we improve and then move? Yeah. We never go back and look at the administrative stuff that can save our younger guys or even vindicate and validate that experience of going back and like teaching the errors of our ways to the new guys coming in. Because that's a powerful thing to heal from. I did this and it cost this, but I don't want you to go through that. As a mentor, as a senior on a team, as just a man, that's a powerful thing to be able to stand up and kind of come full circle in that experience. And we're not doing that. We're limiting ourselves to only talk about training that is kinetic. We're not coming around, but hey, let's talk about what you do in deployment when you have to get a mission done, but you may not have everything on deck. Like, how do you tell that commander, like, hey, you want this, but in order for me to do that, I have to do this, and I'm not comfortable doing that. So, hey, either you're going to give me that order and tell me and give me that exact guidance, or I'm not going to do it, man. But some guys are just so hell-bent on saying, you know what, they don't need to know. We got to do it. It's going to get done.
And I think if we know that we're constantly going to be in a position where we're going to have to find ways to overcome, we should kind of teach ourselves how to do that appropriately as possible.
Yeah.
One of the techniques is to break the rules. That's just one.
Yeah.
Another one is to become masters of exceptions to policy.
Yeah.
If we taught ourselves every time we go do something, we're going to have to look at the exceptions to policies that we need, and we become really, really good at that. And the way that we're really, really good at writing ConOps, the way we're really, really good at doing a lot of things, become really, really good at making those arguments. And then as leaders, we have to go around at the next level and recognize that the folks behind us are in the same boat we were in. So, if you're some kind of battalion level leader and you're going around and, if there's 16, 17 detachments out there and you're trying to find out what problems they have and how they deal with them. Well, the team that doesn't have a problem, right? That person's lying to you.
Yeah.
And so we can reward that team and be like, well, hey, Denny's team doesn't have a problem. What's wrong with you, Joe? And I'll probably be like, well, fuck him. But when we know everyone's doing that, maybe that's when leaders need to start saying, is my job just to try to pull out nuances of success that I can put into a sit rep? Or is my job really to take care of my folks? And if everybody's dealing with certain problems and somebody isn't, then they've either become comfortable lying to me about it, or they found a solution that no one else knows about. But I think that's when you realize, okay, now that's my job. My job isn't to do team stuff, but my job is to solve problems. And if there's certain problems that everyone has, then maybe I should buy it. Maybe I should put some time into figuring out how to solve it, whether it's how we spend money, if everybody's breaking the same rules when it comes to rules of engagement, or how we employ lethality, all of those things. If we're all kind of, if we're all coming up with different coping mechanisms to get around problems that are real, and I think that part comes honestly. I don't think we try to make up and break rules for the sake of breaking rules. I think it comes out of originally from a necessity. If everyone's doing that, then maybe we should be a little bit more honest about it. So when those commanders are like, I got promoted because I didn't have these problems. Well, maybe that's not something to be proud of. Maybe that means that you also turned a blind eye to the realities that are happening down there, and that means you could have done a better job.
Absolutely. But one of the things that I feel we need to get away from is the knee-jerk reaction to smack that hammer down on the lowest ranking leader for things that have been established. A process has been established. It's not the right thing. It's very wrong. But now we have a new commander, and he wants to sit there and look at this process and be like, hey, this is a broken system. How long has it been going on? Well, to be honest with you, since ever. Okay, let's crush this guy. It's like, no. That junior leader has a company commander who gave him guidance to continue going with that broken process. And now what I'm seeing is a lot of guys that are, you think that the problem is solved by, dropping hammer on this one guy. But what happens is the entire company now sees what's happening to, let's just say, Captain Joe or Warrant Officer Jimmy. And everybody sees that and they're like, well, our captain was doing the same thing. Oh, yeah, Chief so-and-so was doing the same thing. What's going on? And now everybody sees that there's no loyalty. There's no like, don't be the guy that gets caught. Got it. So instead of just being honest about now it's deeper embedded to never tell the truth and never talk about it.
Getting caught thing's tough too, because we're all so good that we don't think we're going to get caught. And in reality, mathematically, we get caught very, very seldom.
Yeah.
And so when the comprehensive review first came out, this was true, and it really, really drove me crazy. Senior leaders, I work at SOCOM, right? Senior leaders are running around, and they're like, literally, this was the message. There's 75,000 people assigned to SOCOM, and there's like 5 people that are in trouble. So 5 out of 750,000 or 75,000 is like statistically 0. So we're good. We don't have a problem. Well, sure. Because there's only 1/7 of that is actual people that are doing special operations stuff. So most of the people aren't even in that business. And then those who are, most of them aren't getting caught. And then for those that are, it's easy to be like, well, hey, that's his problem. Or to be lucky. And when you're about to do something and then you find out that Captain so-and-so got in trouble for it, you usually don't even say thanks. You're just like, whoa, I wasn't going to do that. I promise. But I think that's where we can do a better job and come up with creative solutions and ask those hard questions, like, what are your 3 big problems and how do you overcome it? And that way, if everybody's like, I overcome it by, to be honest, I lie on my voucher about how I'm spending money so that I can get the things I need. Because there's a difference between doing that and, using money to buy a Harley. There's a huge difference. Yeah. And I don't want us to have to sit here and pretend, because then that just it speaks to the idea that there's a trust issue, right? So what are you doing as a senior leader for all those people out there that are senior leaders and thinking that they're not in the team guy business anymore? I disagree with that. How are you going to help them solve these real world problems? So if I had to sign certain things that weren't 100% honest about how I was spending money, chances are that's still happening. And what am I doing to help? Or am I just here to make sure? So I have an opportunity to build trust before you need it. That's the thing, is we have to do it early.
Yeah.
And some folks, it seems like they think, well, I haven't done anything to not give them their trust. But on the same point, you haven't done anything to earn it. So you have to, I'm either starting out at 100, like a class, and going down to 0 over time, or I'm starting at 0 and I have to build it. And I think the 0 building up is a better way of looking at it. I'm a new commander, I'm a new C-cell, whatever I am, what have I done to build trust as opposed to what have I done to ruin it?
Yeah.
And if you spend time building it, then I think you can figure that out. I think you'll build a better culture. And if everybody starts doing it, the culture will shape itself. The other thing that I get into, when it's in the paper we wrote, it's in the 6 soft ethical truths. And one of them is that leaders can't be naive or insensitive. So this whole thing where there's the idea of not my guys, not my battalion, because you're so special, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm sorry, half of them don't even know who you are, but you're acting like you're some sort of magical,
it's
you're some sort of magical
true.
leader that you're changing, fairy dust, and you're going to change what's happening 70 miles away from wherever your fob is. I think that's kind of a ridiculous part of our culture as well. And that's something that we should address, because it all ties into, are we building trust? And if we're not building trust, then we are cleverly allowing people to make increasingly less ethical decisions, and it becomes our fault. And that's where we have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And we need to
I think
share these stories. The only
Yes.
people we learn from are the people who get caught. So once you're in jail, it's kind of like too late.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, "Well, no shit, man."
Unless Netflix makes a movie about it, because then we'll watch it.
Yeah. And I try to find those things. I try to find those cases where there was lessons that weren't necessarily learned. There's always, we always know who was there, what happened, the outcomes, but we never really think about how to learn the right lessons from it.
Yeah.
I think, for those who are familiar with the Niger ambush in 2017 in Tonga, there's a lot of things going on. When I try to have these conversations, the people that are more senior leaders are like defending the decisions that the senior leaders are making.
Yeah.
And I think that's unnecessary. We don't have to be there just to defend them for the sake of defending them. I think we should be objective about it. And then seeing that Netflix movie that came out about it, 3212 Unredacted, I think it's worth taking a look at and saying, could this have happened to me?
Yeah.
Am I just lucky that it didn't happen to me? Could this have happened to me? What would I have done? And then as a senior leader, would I have done the same thing? Would I have been like, I'm just going to nuke this captain from a distance and kind of move on with my career? Or are we really going to try to make some differences? And depending,
it was the easiest thing. Yeah, it was the easiest thing to do. Was to triage the situation and amputate that captain,
Sure.
and that's it is an uncomfortable discussion to be had, and a lot of people don't want to have it. And they want to move away from it, but it's not the first time. It's not the first time, not the first incident.
So individual, Colonel X gets to move on with their career typically. Yeah. Sergeant Major X, whatever. But what kind of lasting damages are you leaving? Yes. With our ability to lead a partner force, with our ability to lead ourselves, with our ability to make a cogent argument with the force that you need to use us, right? We have to build trust with outside agencies as well and amongst ourselves. When those kind of leadership problems happen and we don't talk about it, it does us a disservice for sure. And, there's something that, when I look at historically, you look at captains that got in trouble or the ones that have to do something that's outside the norm. The first two ODAs that went into Afghanistan, and they might even come on here and disagree with me, even though they lived it, but they tend to not do very well because you're doing something different where you didn't have the same experience. When you read, 12 Strong, 12 horse soldiers, right?
Horse soldiers, yeah. The movie 12 Strong.
When you read the book, everybody in there who was like above the ODA level went on to have amazing, very, very high level careers.
Yeah.
But the officers on the ground, their careers were kind of cut short. So that sends a message too later on that it doesn't really, you don't really do yourself a service if you if you create problems, if you come up with problems. So we have to reach down there and say, I know you're not going to tell me, but I'm going to go find out what they are. I had a company commander once, and if he's listening, it's not you, but I had a company commander once that said, I don't ever report bad news.
Wow.
And I thought, man, so now you're telling me how to be successful. You're telling me how to make it, but damn. You're also telling me that you're not honest. And then think about it, as that inaccurate information rises higher and higher and higher, then the more senior you are, the more likely you are to make decisions off of imperfect information. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot by tolerating. There should be a certain amount of bad news, right? Like everyone's got a certain amount of bad news. If you don't have any, then I'm going to take a look at you and be like, what are you doing? You're either so smart that you're solving these problems that everyone else deals with, or you're not being honest with me. And if that's the case, then I failed to build a sense of trust with you where you can be like, this is how we're doing it.
We have to remove this idea of, I feel like guys get on the net, whether it's through email or actually calling up on SATCOM, and they have this feeling like, I'm about to talk to dad. Dude, no.
Well,
good, bad, right, wrong, indifferent. Discuss what you have to discuss with your commander. Give them the information. You're not going to always be passing up good news. Get over it. It's fine. Keep them informed. You're not there to patent the information and package it and put it in a nice spot. Like, oh, we're fine. A little overrun, just a little bit of an ambush.
Well, we also have to create a culture of leaders who do that.
Yeah.
Who expect it. Who are like, stop bullshitting me. What's really going on?
Yeah.
Tell me what went wrong. Like, I need to hear about that. I'll give you a medal later for the shit you did right. Like what went wrong and how can we fix it? Because maybe other people are dealing with it and we can save lives that way. I mean, doesn't that make you feel like if you're going to put yourself in a senior leader position that you might be useful?
Exactly.
I mean, there's not a lot of guys on teams that are sitting there going, man, I really wonder what Colonel Long thinks. I mean, that's a pretty small list of people who think that, I have a hard problem. I wonder what the group commander thinks, or I wonder what the GOs are thinking. Unless you're thinking, I wonder what the right answer is to tell them. And that's a different problem.
Yeah.
So I think we have to start thinking about that culture. And one of the ways is that, and we're leaning in on this at JSAL, because we're looking at reframing special operations as a profession in the same way that you have a medical profession, legal profession, those kind of things. Yeah. If you have a special operations profession, then one of the ways that we interact with each other is by rank. Rank's a part of it. And rank is the primary driver of relationships in the conventional for the regular force. But a fellow professional relationship is necessary in the special operations world. So yeah, we have different ranks, but really what we are is fellow professionals.
Yeah.
So just as, if you have a head surgeon who runs a hospital, he doesn't get to come down and tell you exactly how to do your surgery because you have professional training on how to do that. He's supposed to provide guidance and help manage resources and to deal with all sorts of emerging issues, but not to tell you how to do it. I think we benefit from starting to think about it as it's not just like senior and subordinate relationships. They're necessary, but not sufficient. That has to be balanced with the fellow professionals. So it's like, hey, fellow professional, how did you solve these problems? Because you have as much agency as I do.
Yeah.
I'm just in a role. I'm in a higher role, but I'm not a more important professional. We're all equally important because we're in the profession together. So the person doing the surgery versus the person in charge of the hospital, same profession. So let's treat each other that way, first and foremost.
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes people are hesitant to do that because they're like, well, it's that old combat arms thing. You can't tell someone to take a hill if you're too familiar with them. Well, that's some like old school combat arms bullshit, right? Really, we're doing this together. So we need to be a little bit different. We're specially selected and trained to be in this profession. Let's treat each other as professionals.
Yeah.
So we should be interacting a little bit more. So it's like, hey, how come we're not hearing from the new E6s on the team? You guys are professionals as well. What's your experience? Let's have those conversations, and it doesn't have to be dominated by the leaders. Your job as a leader isn't to tell us what to do. Your job as a leader is to facilitate the conversation so that we all become better professionals. We just have to find somewhere where you can go learn how to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not even good at any of this. I'm not good at any of this, but I'm trying to make those kind of changes. I'm not.
Yeah.
So, sometimes senior leaders are like, what makes you think you're a better leader than me? I'm like, I don't at all. Not even a little bit. I'm just a person who studies this. So
yeah.
If I was a dentist, you would probably hope that I know something about teeth that you don't know.
Or be passionate about it.
As a leadership scholar, I study this stuff. So,
and I think one thing that's going to help,
it's not. But I think
one of the things that can help us is definitely changing our culture, and I think we will. Inherently, we're going to have to adapt. The war in Afghanistan is over. We're changing. We're getting rid of the Afghan suit and putting on the suit of the unconventional warrior once again. And I think with that, we're going to see guys that are going to have to start honing their actual craft and knowledge and actually being the that savage tactician that actually reads a lot and understands their AO. We didn't necessarily get to do a lot of that development with our younger guys. Guys weren't attracted to the quiet professional that's a bookworm reading and soaking in that knowledge. But I really feel like we're going to have to go back to that. We're going to have that knowledge, that institutional knowledge, and that desire to learn about your partner force and your AO. It's going to come back. It's if we want to stay relevant.
We have to learn the right lessons, and we have to tell those stories. We have to frame ourselves for what we do. I remember listening one time to General Tovo, and I love General Tovo, and he was making an argument at the Special Warfare Center, and there was 200 people in the room. That we're not necessarily looking for the guy that wants to fast rope out of helicopters and shoot people in the face. We're looking for the guy that wants to do this other stuff. And I was like, I kind of disagree. I think we want the person that can do both.
Yes.
That wants to fast rope out of helicopters and shoot people in the face with an indigenous force. So now I get to where I really hate when you see a poster that's like an SF guy on a flat range watching an indigenous person shoot. And they're like, that's what we do. No, dude. No. So it's that partner force leadership. I want to see pictures of SF guys getting off helicopters, but instead of having, other Green Berets behind them, or a SEAL with a bunch of SEALs behind them, or Rangers or whatever, it's a partner force behind you. We're doing the same thing. I'm just doing it leading a partner force, which is infinitely harder than leading a whole bunch of people just like you. So let's celebrate that. The ultimate leadership challenge, the ultimate warrior challenge is to not just lead people that are like you, but to lead these other folks that you selected and trained and that you have those relationships with. And I think once you frame that, right, and that's why when I was writing my dissertation, I started bringing back the word guerrilla because there's sex appeal to it.
Yeah.
And one of my bosses, who I love to death, he was like, "Well, that's not really what it is. We train, advise, assist in a company." And I was like, that's what we do. That's what you tell other people so they understand the military task, but that's not inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? That's like sex ed, but it's not sex, right? It's like you're taking the sex appeal out of it. Yeah, you train, advise, assist in a company, but really what you do is you lead them. You lead this guerrilla type force, this paramilitary guerrilla type force, not professional military, into very, very complex situations, and you fight with them.
Yeah.
Well, shit, man, that's about as sexy an operation as you can get. So if we can put the sex appeal back in there, it'll make it a little bit less difficult to sell the young guys on, door kicking versus, we can't keep framing the FID kind of things as the lesser form of special operations. That's really where it's at. And when you go do it, then you realize how badass it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And the partner forces you get to do that with, like there's that bond, there's that you're looking for the guy that wants to be out in that element, learning the culture, being able to forge that friendship, that brotherhood, because that's ultimately what's going to give you that buy-in. Like you're looking for those individuals. I've had a lot of great teammates and they absolutely hated working with a partner force. I'm like, dude, you're in the wrong job, brother. Well, everything we do is with these guys. It's like, those are your brothers. That's your family.
We only think we hate it because we're told that you're supposed to hate it.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing across the Joint Force. So when you read the book Alpha about Eddie Gallagher and that whole fiasco, right?
Yeah.
There was this idea that badass SEAL teams go to war and like the second tier SEAL teams go do FID. And because of that, they brought in all of this negative connotations to the job. And they didn't think of themselves as leading a partner force, as becoming one with them and leading them in this very, very exciting adventure. They thought of themselves as there to kind of find ways around the rules so they can go do what they want. And there's a better way to get what you want. Yeah. And that's to embrace this and realize it is the ultimate in the sex appeal. And you have to just call it what it is. We have to add sex appeal to it. We spend so much time, and a lot of leaders spend so much time trying to make this not seem fun because we don't want to boondoggle. But damn, how about just making it fun so you want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that FID isn't fun is like, dude, it's amazing. It's a great catalyst and preparation for going to war, and it works, and it has a purpose. It's a mission with a purpose, but you still get the ability to say, you know what, like, this is in preparation This is a development. This is something I need to get good at and enjoy, because I might be called upon to do this in a little different manner somewhere down the line for different results. And I'm going to be glad I'm here. I'm going to be glad I'm developing and working on this.
And when you sit there and you go, man, I just was a 24-year-old company commander leading folks in very hairy, precarious situations, and we did fine. And then you come out of there having been connected to that partner force. It'll change you. And when you do interviews with the original horse soldiers that did the initial invasions, none of them are telling stories about, yeah, that was bullshit, and I wish that I was kicking doors. They were leading a partner force against America's biggest enemy in like the last 100 years. And there was plenty of sex appeal to go around. I don't think any of them sat there in some sort of identity crisis at all.
No.
And I try to interview them as much as I can, because that helps us go back to, we're not going back to like J-sets in the 90s for the sake of doing J-sets. We're going back to this FID because we're going to do that. It becomes pre-mission training. And then when you're doing it and you're getting shot at, then suddenly it's going to become the ultimate.
Yeah. That's
where your real, if we're going to talk about badass, that's where your badasses are. Then we have to say, okay, now how are we going to keep ourselves from going off the edge ethically and morally, and how we behave, so that we can manage the complexities and return with honor.
Yeah.
So part of what we're teaching at JSOW, and I'm developing the curriculum, so it's still immersion, but at the one level, it's how to lead partner forces from an educational sense, right? Mm-hmm. Most people, you join the military, there's some sort of like, I'm better than you, follow me kind of thing, right? Whether you're in Ranger School and the RIs are like, I'm better than you, follow me. Basic training, I'm better than you because I'm a drill sergeant, follow me. You get to your infantry squad, your Ranger squad, I've been here longer than you, follow me. And that doesn't necessarily carry that type, we call it great man leadership. That doesn't carry into the context of someone in a developing country and tribal society. If we're the most advanced civilization in the history of mankind, and from some of the most well-equipped elite units in the history of warfare, getting off helicopters in the middle of nowhere. We can't just walk over and say, I'm better than you, follow me. So the education is to help us realize that there's some things we can learn about leadership that'll help us say, when I'm out here, I'm not trying to be like my first sergeant, who I think is badass because he yells and screams at people. But I want to learn how to do relational leadership and cross-cultural leadership and understand how to lead in a network where I might have 5,000 people that really work for me. They might not know it, but they do. My influence is huge, beyond my rank. And if we can wrap ourselves around that and turn that into something we take pride in, we're a team guy, E6 on a team can be like, not only did I lead this 100-man company, but I also led it in this environment where I had thousands of people working for me.
Yeah.
Maybe even like to include that Marine battalion down there that worked for me and they didn't even know it. But I was the one who commanded and controlled them when we were, doing operations. That's where it starts to become fun. So we're teaching that just to expose people to that. And that's what we want. We want to try to get entry-level team folks from across the Joint Force as well, whether it's, our AFSOF brothers and SEALs and the MARSOC folks. We want to get them all in there too to learn that. And then later, we're going to build a second course on, now that you're not a team person anymore and you're a more senior leader, how do you mentor partner force leaders behind you? Yeah. It's easy to expect everyone to be the kind of team sergeant that you were. It's hard to mentor everyone and to be the best type of leader they can be.
Yep.
For them. So we're going to teach that. It's a partner force leadership mentor kind of thing where we learn really to be not just leaders in a military unit, but to be stewards of this soft profession. So we're switching the narrative from, just being a major or a sergeant major or whatever to being more of, now I'm a steward of this profession. Yeah. And then suddenly when you think of yourselves as that, then it makes it harder to accept some of the bullshit behavior that we have, right? It makes it harder to be like, well, my job is just to advance my career. No, my job is to be a good steward. And if I'm a good steward, then my career will advance. If I'm not a good steward and I'm a self-serving leader who just wants to look good, then that'll show. One thing you never hear anybody talk about at the senior levels is like, how many people do you mentor?
Exactly. Yeah.
We talk about how many people you rate. Oh, I rate this people, and then we all hate doing OERs and NCOERs and all of that stuff. We talk about how many people we rate with pride, but we never talk about how many people we mentor, and that's a lifetime commitment.
Yeah.
So we're going to teach people from an educational, it's education, not training. So we're not going to give classes on like task condition standards, prepare to mentor. It's going to be more of an education to change the way we think about all of these ideas so that as fellow soft professionals, we get out there and make the most of it. And I think as we build these classes, and at first people are going to be hesitant to do anything new because that's how we are. We also realize we're competing with lethality. If you're a team sergeant and you have 4 months until you deploy, there's things you want all of your folks to do. I'm competing with that. I totally get that. But over time, when people go to these courses and they see the value of it and they come back and they talk about it, it'll create a movement where part of your training is going to be lethality and then this non-lethality, which also really, really attributes to your survivability. So we have to change the way we think about it. And there's some older folks listening to this that are probably like, no shit, we've always done it that way. And maybe so, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to educate ourselves for it. Because we've been doing a lot of things for a long time now that aren't necessarily optimal. And it's time for us to say, let's actually educate for the realities of this. If we let the big conventional military do it, they're going to educate for that profession.
Yeah.
In the profession of arms, are we a part of the profession of arms? Absolutely. But are we the same members of the professional arms? No, we're different. Doctors who are in the military are different than everyone else in the military. Lawyers in the military are different than everyone. We're all in the profession of arms. So the special operations profession is something we can wrap our minds around and then say, how do we educate ourselves? No one else is going to do it. How do we educate ourselves? Because if you just use, PME, well, the PME treats an E6 as an E6 as an E6. Well, I don't necessarily think that's what we need. That doesn't get the job done for what we need. So if what we do is different and special, or maybe not even special, but different, if what we do is that, then we need education to make us better.
Yeah, it's for a long time, everything that's been
commercials
like
over.
Hand down. What's that?
I said the commercial's over, I promise.
No, you're good. For a long time, everything that's kind of given down to us, it's always in a filter of like, all right, well, this is big Army. We'll maybe change the cover slide, put a couple of crests here, and then here you go. But at the same time, it's like, no, dude, that doesn't do it. The team dynamic, the guys are professionals. They need something that is tailored to them.
Yep.
Whether it's talking about ethics or you're talking about cyber awareness, make it relative and make it actually like value added to the team. Because I tell you right now, nothing's more frustrating than having to sit through something that was created by, I don't know, Fort Gordon.
Yeah, sure. Well, and then when you sit through ethics classes that are made for everybody, then they don't really relate to anybody.
Yes.
And somebody once was like, well, it seems like the soft problems are the same as the ones when I was a conventional commander, right? It's DUIs and all of that. And I'm like, here's the thing. Those aren't actually the problems that are getting us in trouble.
No.
Those are the normal problems. It's the other things, right? It's all the people that are kind of famous for ethical misdeeds and special operations. And it's easy once you've been caught to be like, yeah, I can't believe you did that, you son of a bitch. Yeah. Or we'll turn around and say, well, they shouldn't have been in trouble at all because what they did wasn't really wrong. And we still even struggle with that.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to move past that and to be not just say, well, I'm glad it wasn't me, but how are we going to educate ourselves and train ourselves to, you have to educate, then train so that we can rule out these behaviors, so we can develop better coping mechanisms, so we can develop better mentorship programs where we help each other through these things, where we can get up there and honestly say, these are the mistakes I made, and I'm telling you, we're not going to do them.
Yeah.
Not because I'm trying to say, not on my watch, because that doesn't resonate, right? Especially because, everybody knows you. They're like, Joe, bro.
Dude, we know you.
Yeah, like Oh, so now you're in command of something, and like, ain't nobody doing this on my watch. Well, that's terrible. We don't need a culture of a bunch of people leading through hypocrisy and directives and saying, oh, I'm going to solve these problems because I'm going to come up with a clever way to enforce the rules. I even got nervous with some of the comprehensive review things where it's like, oh, that's because there's no leaders present. So, I mean, honestly, what we don't need is a bunch of battalion commanders flying all over the world thinking they have to be everywhere.
Yeah.
That's not the solution either. All of these things are symptoms of ineffective, inefficient, insufficient education. We have to educate ourselves better so that I don't have to be there, because I'm never going to be there. And if it takes me standing there next to you to do the right thing, then what does that mean? It means
exactly.
Nothing. It means that we haven't done anything, and that's all we have is a bunch of senior leaders that think that way, coming through and just kicking the can down the road a little bit farther. And that's what's great. I'm not in the Army anymore. I'm not any kind of senior leader. I'm Dr. Long, and I get to develop education. And so I'm saying, hey, let's have an educational experience that helps shape the way we think and behave and how we treat ourselves. And once you have these conversations, I've yet to have anybody. I've had people start out with kind of like, this is dumb, fuck this, but I've never had anybody listen to the whole thing and say it at the end. After hearing everything you had to say, I still think you're an idiot. It typically doesn't
respectfully
happen.
Doctor.
Usually people somewhere along the way are like, okay, I see what you're saying.
No, it's because you have to put an importance in, and you can absolutely tell that you're passionate about it, and you're passionate about helping not only the regiment, but us, the guys that are out, the guys that are done with their service. It is value added to have these discussions. We were sold a culture and sold an idea, this mythos that this is how we do it. It was a sexy idea to think, because I know it. I saw the guys that came in and were like, cool, where's all the money now? And it's like, I heard about the Harleys. I heard about the guy that's got the Lamborghini. That's all fine and dandy till you start seeing the guys get caught, and you start seeing the dudes that are going to jail and the lives getting destroyed. And then you're sitting there like, holy fucking shit, am I next? What did I do? Oh, you're not going to talk about this, are you, Billy? And it's like, no, dude, you don't have to be there. Doesn't have to be your life. You can mitigate all this by just not doing it and understanding that there's probably a process and a framework to actually get approval to go do the one thing that you're trying to do, which is accomplish the mission and bypass all this other bullshit.
Well, any courses or any models, any way of thinking that forgets that it's also mostly first and foremost about positive operational outcomes is just ineffective.
Yeah.
And if it's about follow the rules because I say so, or, add some paragraph to your con op so I can check the block to say, Denny said he wasn't going to do dumb shit. That's ineffective as well. We have to come up with those deep solutions, and we can't turn around and sell, we can't sell abstinence.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We can't sell abstinence, and anybody who thinks we can is probably just too caught up in their day-to-day life to not really think about the impact that they're having. Abstinence doesn't work. We have to sell responsibility. How do you do the things you need to do responsibly so you can return with honor, given some of them are going to be outside the bounds of what you would normally do? And if you can make those decisions, then you ought to be able to talk about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
You ought to be able to be like, hey, General Caballero, I'm about to go out and I'm about to do this. And here's the part where I'm going to get outside the bounds. But if we're fellow professionals, you'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Because I would have done the same thing in your shoes. Well, now we're talking. Now I can trust you. Now I'll actually tell you about what happens.
Yeah. Those are the hard discussions we all wish we could have. Yeah.
Man, your report rate about things that are really happening is just going to infinitely go down. Because I tell you, conversations about, gosh, I trust the generals and gosh, I trust the colonels, those are pretty few and far between in any kind of team room. I don't care what part of the joint soft force you're in.
Yeah.
Special operators, team level special operators are not sitting around going, thank God that general's up there because I really trust that cat.
Fuck no.
It's a shame because it could be. But we have to educate to fill that gap
Yeah.
because we're using a system that was made for one thing, for conventional military forces based off of 20,000 years of military history with platoons and companies and all of these things in a process that we have to adapt to fit our needs in a different type of profession. Because this is one of the first few times that there's ever been a professional special operations.
Yeah.
Historically, it's just folks specially selected to go off and do one mission, and then they go back to doing whatever they were doing. We have a professional special operations force now,
Yeah.
which requires us to have an education that matches that to help us think about all of these things, to become a difference. So, at a certain point, when you go back, when you get high enough, you find yourself going back to the conventional force, and that becomes hard too. And so I think a lot of things think, well, if I'm going to do this and end up back in the conventional side, I'm just going to stay conventional in my thinking, which is also not helpful. And that doesn't do a lot to breed trust.
Yeah.
Another great thing that we kind of kicked around the idea is that when you think about that and this new special operations profession that we have now in the profession of arms, and if you look at the literature of it, and this is kind of nerdy, but there's literature on civil military relations and the role that a military plays with society. And originally, officers were considered the true members of the profession of arms. Enlisted folks were just doers of the violence. Yeah. The officers were the managers of the violence, and that was the profession. Well, since that time, we've professionalized an NCO Corps with huge positive effects around the globe. I mean, now any military that doesn't have a professional NCO Corps, we know is grossly third rate, fourth rate. So we've changed that. And in the special operations profession, it's actually different. The actual true center of gravity of the SOF profession isn't the officer, it's the SOF NCO. The SOF NCO is the true SOF professional. And so because of that, that's where we need to put the focus of our education, the focus on our development. One, developing the officers that we do have, developing them to deal with that profession and to work for that profession, not against it. And then also to develop the NCOs, because if you go try to mirror what's going on in the other professions, you're going to find yourself continuing to be a fish out of water. So instead of just expecting us to live with one foot in both camps, now's our chance to educate ourselves so that we can be who we are. We can look in the mirror and know exactly who's looking back at us. And a lot of folks are like, that's not my problem. I didn't have that problem. But I think you did. I really do. I think you did. It takes getting comfortable to say, yeah, there's some shortcomings here. So the professional thing is huge. It's the first thing we need to do is get that identity straightened out. Then with an identity, then we can build a purpose. And then once we have a purpose, then we can develop processes and TTPs and rules of engagement and all these things to make that happen.
Yeah, and on the backside, when we're leaving, we have to do that whole thing all over again.
And I was just about to say, then when you leave, now you have to come up with and say, okay, this was my identity. What's it going to be now?
Yeah.
And you find an identity. So I love looking at, or talking to folks that are doing transition. And I do some work with the Honor Foundation, and they have a really, really great program. But my kind of working hypothesis as a professional nerd, as a scholar, is that the first thing you need to do is find a new identity.
Yeah.
Green Beret Denny is going to be former Green Beret Denny. What does that mean? There's some new identity that you can take on that will make you a better fit for what you do. Then when you have that identity, then you can get a good purpose that matches the identity, that nests, if you will. And then once you have that purpose that nests, then you can find a job that meshes with those, and then everything else will fit. I think when we skip that and we go straight to let's find employment.
Yes.
Now suddenly you have money and you have an employment, but you still have an identity crisis.
Yeah.
And an identity crisis is hugely painful.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of guys deal with that as soon as they exit, and they don't get into a fellowship. They don't go into any sort of preparatory planning or into anything. They just exit and just go straight out, and they'll jump into a job. And I think if they're lucky, they go to the civilian route and they don't do contracting work. but it's something like 9 months. Within 9 months, 6 to 9 months, that job's done. Like, holy shit, I can't do this anymore. And it's like, fuck.
One of my best friends,
that?
He'll probably listen to this, so I won't say his name, but it rhymes with John. He got out fairly recently, very senior officer, and was able to make enough money to where now he's like, okay, I have money now. We spend most of our career trying to figure out what to do with the little bit of financial resources we have. Then when that's no longer a problem, it doesn't take very long for suddenly then to be like, well, the JOB part of this isn't really sufficient anymore.
Yeah.
It's nice, but it's not sufficient. The real thing is what do I do? So now you have folks that are like, I'm going to get out. I don't want to have anything to do with the military. I'm going to start fresh. That might work for you, but it also, in doing so, you might be kind of, jumping over some of the things that you need to work out to get there. How do you transition this identity from wherever it is, whether it's, door kicking or being a great administrator or being some high level commander or whatever your identity is, how do you get it to an identity that makes sense in the, in the civilian world, whatever that is, because you're still going to hold on to this. And not a lot of people want to talk about that. So that's the conversations I have with anybody that ever wants to talk to me about transition. We're going to have conversations about finding an identity first and foremost.
Yeah.
Then purpose, and then you can do the Simon Sinek, find your why, and all of that stuff. And that stuff is really helpful. But first, you have to find yourself with an identity, and you'll see it because you'll have folks 2 years later be like, I used to be this man among men. I used to be this, and now I'm a stockbroker. And it might seem funny when you're still in to be like, oh, I'm drowning in my $750,000 a year. But hey, drowning is drowning, right? And if you're not happy, it doesn't matter. If you're not happy, and then you can't even talk about it because everyone's like, F you, you have money now. You're like, yeah, but I'm still not happy because I'm still struggling with an identity crisis. So that on the transition side, I think that's what we need to bring into our vernacular. And those that are ahead of us, in the same way, those that made ethical bad choices ahead have an obligation. Hey, we don't run with rucksacks anymore. We don't do this kind of thing anymore. There's better ways to do it. Those of us that are ahead, because when you're a professional for life, right?
Yeah.
So now my professional obligation is to come have this conversation with you, and your professional obligation to say, here's what we think is real right now.
Yeah, I'm 100% grateful for the opportunity to be a fellow or going through the fellowship at the Honor Foundation right now. Yeah. And one thing I've told my mentor and everybody that I'm involved with is I started this process of understanding who I was in a hospital. Like I hit my rock bottom, and I had to start understanding who I was from zero, from scratch. Because once you hit your bottom and don't understand who you really are, and you realize this chapter of my life is going to end, who the fuck am I? And that was remarkable. That was a remarkable journey to stand there and be like, okay, slowly but surely piecing together, okay, this is who I am. This is a little bit more. This is a little bit more. Now having that solid understanding of like, this is who I am. This is my purpose. This is what I will be continuing chasing as I move forward. That's been a blessing to me. And I've been reaching out, working with my friends and anybody who needs help that has reached out and been like, dude, how did you get here? It's like, well, it's not an impossible task. You just need time and give yourself the space and grace to say, hey, what's the next week, 2 weeks look like? Who am I? What do I enjoy? And that's really a process that anybody can do. You just have to be vulnerable and willing to take it.
You do. And it's common everywhere. I had the fortune of going to my 25-year college reunion just this weekend. So I just got back recently. And so I'm looking at my classmates that are still in, and they're all 06s, or most of them are 06s. And they're struggling. So they're like, one of them was like, well, I'm leaving here and I'm going to go do one more 3-year tour. And if you get a chance to talk to them about it, like, why? And it's like, because I get to kick the can down the road 3 more years. But which is great if you're making a very, very deliberate decision. If you're saying, I can come in at this 3 years down the road, I'm going to get this. but you're also going to be 3 years older trying to compete as a fairly new person in a new industry.
Yeah.
3 years older. So I don't think anybody really teaches us how to make those decisions. And the easiest thing to do sometimes, not for everybody, and anybody that wants to, call me later and say I'm wrong, that's fine. But if you know what's going to happen, being prepared to deal with it in various different stages and making deliberate choices to stay as opposed to staying by default. And if that's happening to everyone else, when you're a finance officer or a quartermaster or anything, because there are civilian versions of your job, ours is a little bit less. So, being prepared ahead of time, you had a certain event that forced you to think about it. And a lot of people do, and that's great. Some people don't. Sometimes you're a victim of your own success too, because catastrophic success will just keep you busy. And then later on, you might even have harder. So, you retire in a lower rank, looking at your buddies that are higher rank and not realizing that they're in pain because you don't see it. It's the same thing with the money. I think that's something we have to keep an eye on as well. And again, it helps when you find yourself in that, in the position to adapt a new identity that matters, that resonates, that makes you feel as proud as your Green Beret life did.
Yes.
And it's tough. I think I was fortunate that I fell ass backwards into academia. Anyone who knew me as a captain is probably, still laughing because I had a 2.7 GPA in college. It wasn't my thing. I wanted to go off and have an adventure. And then eventually I got to where that wasn't happening anymore.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to go to grad school. And then suddenly I found that I enjoyed that. But I got lucky. And a lot of people don't always get that lucky. A lot of people maybe are more successful than I am. And because of that, they get promoted into the right jobs. And then it becomes harder to get out of that path.
Yeah. When
maybe you should have. And so those are the things that folks need to think about. Am I making this decision because I'm afraid, or which is great because that pisses people off, right? Well, I'm not afraid.
Yeah,
it's like,
kind of are.
I mean, I'm not judging you, my friend. I'm just saying, your first thing that came out of your mouth was like, I'm kind of kicking the can down the road. So yeah, I'm afraid to get my knee X-rayed because I'm afraid I'm meant to have surgery. It's kind of the same fear, right? But I think those are the conversations that we need to have. And I love that you're doing this. I think we need to do it more in more context and have more. You're going to win this over one conversation at a time. 2 or 3 people will resonate every time, and eventually it'll build a following. Just like with this education I'm trying to do. 2 or 3 people every class will appreciate it. They'll talk about it, and it'll eventually become a new way of thinking about who we are. Shape our identity while we're in, which will help shape our identity when we get out.
One thing that I've realized when the Honor Foundation brought up the 50 cups of coffee, it was like, I've already been doing this. My 50 cups of coffee is now at 120 because every person I interact with or bring on the podcast, it's someone that I want to talk to and have that conversation. And it might not be focused on what the purpose of the 50 cups of coffee is, but it's engaging, it's enriching, and it's learning something new. And it's understanding that if I get to sit down and have, well, wow, shit, we're at an hour. I didn't even know it was an hour. We're at an hour and 8 minutes. That's somebody that's willing to give me their time.
Yeah.
Which is the most valuable resource. Like it's not money, it's time. If somebody's willing to sit down with me and give me an hour of their life, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That tells me like, okay, that person sees value added in discussing anything and everything with me. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's phenomenal. And that's why I tell people, like, I'm not in the business of telling anybody no. I mean, who am I to say no? I'm fortunate. I was very lucky to get where I am. One, to have not, gotten in too much trouble along the way where I couldn't make it this far, but the opportunities I had, and so I have an obligation to spend my time giving back and to not just go find things that are comfortable for me, but to do that. Who am I? And if somebody wants to talk to me,
if I give a presentation, 500 people in the room, and one person follows me out afterwards to have a conversation, then, I mean, that's what matters right there. If you're helping and getting these ideas out there, even when you're wrong, that's how you find out that you're wrong, is having these conversations. I think we can do that. And the professional sense of brotherhood outside should be even stronger than on the inside. And that's where we really have to work, because some guys think I'm done. You know, I don't need that. Well, maybe you do. And maybe it's okay. It's okay to go off and be a stockbroker, but also to still be a former Green Beret and to still want to get that kind of fellowship and to have that important to you, or to still have that identity as a Green Beret. You know, some of the senior leaders I talked to that found themselves in jobs where they didn't really think about that anymore. Like, well, I haven't really felt like a Green Beret in a long time. And I'm like, I get it, because you're trying to blend back in with the big army as you circle around. But at the same time, it's kind of a shame, because what we have is special. And when you're done, the people on the staff with you that aren't Green Berets aren't really going to be there to understand you any better. So I don't think we have to take, one hat off and put the other one on. Keep that damn hat on and keep that identity going, just realizing that part of your identity is to lead people that aren't like you.
Yeah.
So when you do that, then it's like a continuation of it. You're like, oh, I might be a, deputy division commander, but I'm still a Green Beret. And I think that'll go a long way to helping do that. And then to take that identity back when you get out. Because when you see those senior leaders get out and then they go, like we have this thing in Tampa where we all get together, at least for the first group guys, and it's fun. It's fun to see everyone getting together, and people have been out all sorts of different amounts of time. And it's great seeing where everybody is and to have that sense of,
brotherhood and belonging, community.
Yeah. We all did dumb shit once upon a time, and we all survived, some more narrowly than others. And you get a chance to sit down and go, man, my career really wasn't shit. This guy's career is pretty awesome. But to be able to do that and then figure out how to turn that into something that fits you, to build that to bridge that Green Beret identity into whatever it is, whether you want to be an actor or a model or a firefighter or, stockbroker or business entrepreneur or whatever, all of those different identities are there, but we can teach ourselves how to do it better, I think. Absolutely.
I want to thank you for coming on here. We're a little bit over our time, but I'm not going to edit any of it because this has been one of the best. I will show you everything that I was going to bring up and talk about. I don't think we even hit I can't really see it. We didn't even hit half of it. No.
I failed you.
The first thing was ethics, and we covered it. But that just means that I'm going to have to ask you to come back on, because I really wanted to hit you up on some more of once I found your papers, I was like, drag, drop, start reading. And one of the big things that's on my my radar is social media. So I'd like to have you back on to talk about that monster.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to read that stuff, I don't have like a really website or whatever, but in Google Scholar, if you Google like Dr. Joseph Long, Green Beret, that'll just get you away from every other Joseph Long on the planet. And, read some of the stuff. If you think it sucks, you can email me and say, hey, I think that sucks. I don't care. Because at least, if anything, you're talking about it.
Yeah.
We said the same thing about the ethics paper. I even got in an argument about whether we put it in Special Warfare magazine or some peer-reviewed journal. Yeah. And I was like, no one's going to read it. Special Warfare magazine, people will read it. It'll end up on the shitter floor in, 5th Group Barracks somewhere, but someone will read it.
Yes.
And if somebody wants to email me and say, we talked all day long about what a jackass you are and how your paper's wrong, then I'm like, you spent all day talking about ethics and you didn't even know it. So I'm not even sad about that.
I think the funniest thing, and I'll end at this, when I was a young Green Beret, that's the only time you would see this.
Yeah.
You would see that magazine. But then as I got older, it was on, I would prominently bring it into the team room, like, hey, have you guys read this? It's it's that moment of knowing, God damn it, I'm so fucking old and worthless now.
It's funny. Then you start seeing your friends in there, and then you're like,
yeah,
fuck that guy. Well, maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. But hey, you know what? taking a stab at ethics is what it is. If you like it, I hope you do. If you don't, that's fine too, because then that means now that's one more way not to build a light bulb, to go back to Thomas Edison's old phrase, right? We'll get there.
I'll do you one better. I'll take your work on ethics, and I'll have that on our website if anybody wants to refer back to that. Just so you can see, because there's a common misconception that we just operate in this world without repercussions and no ethics, and that's completely untrue.
Sure.
Thank you again for coming on.
Anytime,
it's so
man.
cool
I appreciate it. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And if you ever need anything, like I said, I'm not in the business of telling anybody no.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys, take it easy.
Oh, wow, that was a good show, and I bet you can't wait for the next episode to drop, and I'll let you know something. It's coming real soon. But in the meantime, why don't you head on over to triplenickel.com and buy some new shirts or hats and share them with your friends and family, because that's what the new year's about, gratitude, showing it to everyone. So yeah, go to triplenickel.com and use our code, Security Hub Podcast, for 15% off your entire order. Holy...